up, you guys? This is Rob from the Gay Guy Plays, and today on the Daily Grind, we're not going to be talking about the best, we're not going to be talking about the worst, we're going to be talking about the Warframes that nobody is talking about. So a part of what brought this on was mainly because of the fact that I had kind of looked through my list of Warframes and I had noticed Inaros, and a part of me was like, wait, weren't you supposed to have a helmet that was coming out with the last Tenogen? And usually, I'm pretty on top of all of that Tenogen stuff. I'm like, okay, I know what's coming out, I know what's going on, and I noticed that it had come out, or at least I don't think that it's come out, and a part of me thought, why didn't I remember this? And I kind of stopped in my tracks and I was like, you know what, it's probably because you don't remember Inaros. Like, Inaros is one of those frames, and I don't want to say that he's a bad frame in any way, shape, or form, because he's absolutely incredible, and I'm not doing him any justice now, because I know I should be using a covert lethality dagger, but you know what, give me a break. I figured it was scythes, it was too many dual commas prime scythes, and I felt like it was going to be a little bit thematic, and we weren't going to do anything escalating, so I'm not worried about it. But you know, Inaros has this great way of using CC. He's great at replenishing his own health. He has a lot of sustainability. He can heal his team. He's got, you know, he's got defensive measures that he can use. He can heal people. So there's a lot of great benefits to Inaros, but just nobody was talking about him. And it really got me to thinking, and one of my conclusions was that there was nothing wrong with Inaros. There just wasn't anything outstanding, I guess I want to say, about him. And when I say outstanding, I mean along the lines of there's nothing wrong with him, and there's nothing so super amazing about him. So, I mean, if you think about it, one of the frames that is very, like, you know, very, very talked about is Nidus. And of course, Nidus has some cool scaling mechanics with his ability to kind of like stomp down and lay down these patches of infested fields. But, you know, Nidus has scaling damage as well. He can kill enemies in a single hit. He can heal his allies in a mobile way. He's got a lot of sustainability. So a part of me is like, okay, why doesn't he get stanned half as much as Nidus does? Oh, did I just fall through the world? Maybe it's because you end up falling through the world and things like this happen. So let's go ahead and do a little unstuck. Whoops-a-doodle. Maybe that's the entire reason why Inaros doesn't get as much love, because he can literally stick himself in the world and have embarrassing moments on camera like that. But I've noticed that as of late, you know, the frames that get really talked about are the ones that either people consider to be OP, or the frames that people consider to be very, very underpowered. You know, we've had a lot of talk with the recent reworks about Hydroid and Oberon, but even before their reworks, a lot of people, you know, they were names on people's lists. And a part of me almost felt like, okay, so does it only take having something wrong with you for people to really give a shit? And I mean, in that case, I'm also going to use this as a positive thing. You know, if there's something wrong with you, as in some people might consider you to be OP, you know, there's always been talk about frames like Trinity, which I don't feel like are OP, you guys. I feel like that's a ridiculous joke that came from TennoCon. But you know, there are frames that are considered extremely powerful frames, and there are frames that certain content creators definitely, you know, stand behind. They do their own standing, but nobody's really kind of come to the aid of frames like Inaros. And I started thinking about it. I was like, what other frames are out there that you don't feel like anybody necessarily talks about? And this is something that I want to leave in the description box. I'm thinking of putting together a what is it called? A straw poll, right? I want to put together a straw poll and see what frames you guys are not talking about. And not in like any kind of vindictive way or anything bad. I really want you to be cognizant of something that you can't really be cognizant of, because nobody's talking about it. I want you to just pay attention. Who of your friends is talking about what frames, and what frames do you guys just never ever mention? And I also want to know why you guys don't talk about those frames. Is it just because, you know, it's not your favorite and you just end up never talking about them? Or are they decent frames? They're just not frames that you really give two shits about. Oh, I'm loving this Doge right now. I'm so loving this Doge. But I think it all boils down to, and this was a really, really interesting thing that I considered, was now I'm going to show my geek side here. For those who play Magic the Gathering, this name will actually be familiar with you, but if you don't, you'll be like, I don't know what the crap you're talking about. But of course there is Mark Rosewater, and I believe he is he is either the creative designer or the lead creative designer. He's one of the big names in Magic the Gathering, basically, is what we're saying here. And one of the processes that he actually determines to see if a card is good or not is he'll actually go about the office and he'll throw, these cards at people. Well, not literally throw them, but, he'll be like, all right, we'll take a look at these cards. How do you feel about them? I want you to rate them from a 1 to a 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, clearly. So what he does is, he takes these rankings of these cards, and what he's looking for, interestingly enough, are not 6s or 7s, nothing like that. He's actually looking for the 10s and the 1s. He's looking for the cards that are the most polarizing. He's looking for the cards that some people absolutely love and some people absolutely hate. Like, that's one of the big things that he kind of, that he really tries to see, see how people feel about it. And I mean, I found that to be really, really interesting, and I thought that might actually play a role in, why we talk about certain frames and why we don't talk about other frames, right? Is it because we're just looking for frames that make us feel a way, and maybe frames like Inaros don't make you feel a way? And that's kind of what I was thinking about too, is like what other frames are out there that I don't really feel like people talk about. Like, and I know this is gonna piss off some people, but I really don't hear people talk about Nyx very often. I don't hear people talk about Vauban very often. Like, legitimately, I don't hear Vauban talked about a lot at all, if I'm gonna be completely and utterly frank with you. I hear no Vauban talk, and while I don't think that Vauban is necessarily the most powerful frame of the bunch, I don't necessarily feel like he's a weak frame either. He has so much control that it's kind of insane what he can do and his effect on the battlefield. So my question to you guys is, in that same vein, do you feel like people don't talk about certain frames because certain frames are just not crazy outstanding or anything? And I mean, we can even take a look at some of the frames right now to see exactly, where all of that stands. Because I think it's really, really interesting that there are just frames that are good, but just not good enough. And I kind of want to go through and, like, kind of note some of them, because, like you said, I feel like Inaros is a powerhouse of a frame, but there are just some frames that don't get much love. Like Limbo, people are always talking about Limbo, right? People love the shit out of, not love. People like to express the way that they feel about Limbo, right? Hydrid recently got his rework, and, he got a lot of talk about. You get the occasional talk about Frost, but I don't feel like Frost is on anybody's, I don't feel like people are, like, jumping at talking about Frost. Chroma is, like, one of the big frames that a lot of people stand for. They love, 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 love Chroma. A lot of people love, 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 love Ash, so you'll always hear about those two frames talked about a lot. Mesa's another one that a lot of people talk about a lot. I don't feel like Nekros gets talked about very much, but I feel like people are aware of him. Nidus is one of the ones that people talk about a ton. Nyx is one of the ones that I don't feel like people talk about very much whatsoever. I haven't heard about Valkyr in a long time, unless it's Megan talking about Valkyr. So it's kind of like one of those things that I'm wondering if it just has to do with the social circles that we travel in, and if maybe that's the only case for why we don't hear about certain frames. Is it just is it just the friends that we hang around with? But right now, one of the frames that I feel is kind of coming up in conversation a lot is Zephyr. I feel like a lot of people are saying, we did Hydroid, we took care of Oberon, now the next frame to get reworked is Zephyr. So it's kind of like, now that Zephyr has kind of fallen lower in the pecking order, there's a little Mogamu pun for you, that now she's getting talked about more, when, in certain cases, Wukong, I feel, is a completely fine frame. I'm not going to say that he's the greatest, and I definitely don't think that he's the worst by any means. I mean, the guy is pretty much near unkillable. So people don't really talk about him much either, and I'm kind of like, I get that weird feeling, because even though Valkyr did get a little bit of a nerf, Wukong, Valkyr, Vauban, Inaros, I feel like they're all pretty solid frames. Nyx is definitely a solid frame, but there are just some frames that people don't talk about. So Let me know in the comments below what your group of friends is talking about, what your group of friends isn't talking about, more importantly, and why you don't think they're talking about them. Is it the kind of middle child syndrome? Are these frames 5s, 6s, and 7s as opposed to frames like Limbo, who people either absolutely love or people absolutely hate? Same thing goes for frames like Chroma, like that people absolutely love Ash. Of course, there's the underlying secret society of Loki Master Race, and same thing goes for Mesa. People love the shit out of Mesa. So leave all of those feelings in the comments below, and as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and give some love to Inaros, because he's a good frame. He deserves a little bit of attention, y'all. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.